About a year and a half ago, I attended a conference in Singapore. This conference was bringing together investors and entrepreneurs, and it's providing an environment to showcase startups to investors and bridge the ecosystem like many other events do. But there was one interesting conversation which came up during that. So this American team which was there looking at startups, and one thing they pointed out was that founders from the Asia Pacific region. There were many Indian startups there, Singapore, Vietnam. There are a lot of people out there. One thing they pointed out was that there is a stark difference between founders in the Bay Area and founders outside Bay Area. There is a reason for that because predominantly, if we see, most of the new emerging technologies come from the Bay Area, and then the world tries to adopt. So we should not technically compare both these places, but as a mindset, we need to we I feel there are takeaways what we can take. Is that correct? Is this wrong, or this correct, or that wrong? I'm not going into the debate. All I wanted to talk today was about how, as founders in India, we can take away few things from the Bay Area founders. My friend Rajan puts it very nice. It's easier to earn a dollar than a rupee. That's a huge statement, but I have difference of opinion with him. But if you look deeply into what he says, it makes a lot of sense, which is right. So let me start with the first one uh, in the whole thing, which is nothing but your risk appetite. Bay Area founders have a little bit more risk appetite than the founders in India. This comes with a lot of social stigma and the whole aspect of entrepreneurship which comes around with it. Predominantly, India is a business oriented environment, and usually, first time entrepreneurs like us, many people like me, have a little bit of pullback. Everybody says, why don't you just stick your job? Why do you want to go through that? I mean, can you make it? Because the failure rate is much more higher. But what I personally believe is the persistence. And also, there are certain domains where even if you take a risk, a calculated risk, it becomes difficult. But there are success stories in that. The live example is health tech domain. In India, if you're building health tech applications or any software or technology pertaining to healthcare, it'll have a lot more filtering because the laws governing healthcare have not been very well defined in our country. So even the laws are referred to books which are written 5, 10, 15 years ago, and we don't have any current upgradation. The only thing which came recently is that now any healthcare data should be within the physical boundaries of India and not outside India. So there are many data centers which have set up, and most of them have come out with this rule in terms of data staying in the country. uh, when it comes to healthcare, it is very difficult because everybody comes from their perspective, and our healthcare system is more private driven than public driven. So you have to sell it to hospitals and not to the governments, and it becomes a very difficult thing over a period of time to start standardizing it because everybody has a way of doing it. So I'm not discouraging people who want to start up in healthcare. In fact, I have an idea. I'll kick it off whenever I can. But one thing is very sure that from a domain perspective, healthcare is very, very difficult. However, India showed the world in a different domain, which is fintech. If UPI is working and being replicated in many countries around the world, it shows our strength in how we can solve complex problems in simpler ways. But there is a path to it. The second aspect, what I feel, is the resource pool. Fortunately or unfortunately, in India, all of us deem to understand everything about technology, everything about business. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but this is the harsh truth. When I started my journey as a co-working SaaS, whenever I used to go to co-working spaces to talk to them about the technology and the workflow, the first answer I used to get is, my co-founder is a tech guy, he will build it for me. So we had those challenges. Even then, we had few clients who were using it, but we made a decision to pivot out of it, and hence we don't do that anymore. But this is one of the key aspects which come into picture. The second aspect which comes into picture is the resource pool, the abundance of resources what we have available. That also plays a very important role, because many a times we might not get the quality team together in the initial years to manage and scale the product or service what we're going to build. The third part is the market approach and how we scale. In Bay Area, if you look at entrepreneurs, they focus on the idea and they go deeper into the idea. They're more vertical, and they look at scalability first. They have a global first approach rather than a local first approach. They test their products in the local market, but quickly go global. A classic example is Uber. When they started, even though they started in the Bay Area itself, they, because the platform was easier to replicate, they could grow and multiply into many countries around the world. Now, the second part to it is the amount of resources and money what is required to put in. Uber needed a lot of funds. It took a long time for them to become profitable and sustain themselves. And many local regulations and everything comes into picture. For example, in India, not any people with whiteboard cannot drive as a Uber because it falls under a taxi category. So we need to have a yellow board. So the reach is different. The laws are different. Every country has their own laws which we need to follow. But again, the way the problem is solved is a global first approach. Here in India, we tend to look at more from a sustainability standpoint. How fast can I make revenue to sustain? And the next part comes is, how fast can I get acquired or can I sell so that I can settle down and do something else? That's the approach between the two entrepreneurs on both sides of the ocean. Uh, when it comes to hiring and managing the teams, in India, we want to have the complete control. We don't want to give away a lot of equity when we start with, because we make decisions, which is not wrong, which is right. But today, if you look at the kind of resources which are available, there are a lot of fractional CXOs, CTOs, CEOs, COOs, and CPOs who are available, who come at a very nominal cost. So entrepreneurs today can take advantage of these experienced people and look at what services they offer, utilize it, pay them, and get going. So it helps to bring the experience at a fractional cost and also help your teams adapt to what the fractional CXOs provide, so that you can look at it as a growth strategy. And second part to it is, from the Bay Area perspective, you have resources available, but they founders are not thinking twice to share their equity at the beginning stage itself, so that teams can come in and help grow the organization. One of the thing is, when you look at equity for a team member, what we are saying is, here is your compensation, part of is linked to your how the company grows and you make the money back. But we not might not give the ownership completely to them. So when I say ownership, we still have that management or a micromanagement kind of a perspective from the team members, which gets into a conflict, and they might not give the 100%. But are there not companies who have done that model and been successful? They are. The next point can be the long-term vision versus the short-term vision. We need to look at a problem to be solved from a long term perspective. Nothing can work in short term.
When I talk to entrepreneurs, many of them feel in the next 12 to 18 months we should be there. Next 18 to 24 months we should be there, which is not bad from a goal setting standpoint and a functioning standpoint. But the idea should be on the long term perspective. What is the vision and what are we trying to do? Many of the startups whom I talk to lack the long term vision. We are solving the problem today. That's about it. This is how we want to solve. And if it goes this way, that way, then they are stuck. If from the moment of starting up, if somebody can be more open in looking at how to solve the problem, talk to strategists and understand what is the bigger problem they can get into, it becomes more easier in terms of planning for your long term. Don't look at the short term, look at the long term. There are companies in India which have a long term vision and they've been building it. ERP Next is one of the fantastic examples I can give in terms of how long-term vision plays, and 10 years later where they are and how amazing they're doing. Zoho is another example. They're all long-term players. Nobody's looking at a short-term solution. But predominantly, the startups which are coming up today are looking at short-term solutions and trying to sustain, which is again not wrong. We have to figure out a balance between solving the problem, getting that revenue so that we stabilize and start looking at focusing on growing to the next level. The last but not the least is more from a customer centric versus investor centric. Predominantly in Indian entrepreneurs are investor centric startups. One thing we need to understand, the traditional investors who are there, traditional in the sense the big investors who are there in India, are mostly from the West who are coming down here and who want to invest in Indian startups so they can they can be on the journey from an early on aspect. But the moment entrepreneurs start giving the direction to the investor, or the investor starts giving to the direction, and the entrepreneur gives in to the direction what the investor is giving, you've lost the idea, you've lost the credibility, and now you're navigating to ensure that you're following what your investor says so that the money is coming in and going. But as an entrepreneur, if you have the clarity of the vision for the long term, investors do listen to you and investors do invest in you. And there are many ideas they don't. Investors also want money fast, so they look at how fast can you go from series C to B to A and give an exit to them, and they're very happy. But in India, investors also, you also have investors who are on the long run. It's just that you have to find them. So, in summary, when I look at the mindset difference between Bay Area founders and Indian founders, this is what highlights. Now, why am I doing this video? You can say, Hari, you're comparing apples to oranges. Correct, I'm comparing apples to oranges. But treat this more from an education standpoint, or understanding how the global startups operate and look at things how they happen. Look at it from that standpoint. And I'm not putting anybody down here. It's just that we can learn from each other mindsets, and we can capitalize on the best. We are best at the jugaad. Everybody, even if you ask any AI tool, what are Indian entrepreneurs good for? The first answer would be Indian entrepreneurs have a jugaad mentality. So we are good at that, but we can capitalize on that, take few things away from the Bay Area. And if you have the patience, there are many other regions which are there, and you can look at how they're solving problems. Hopefully, in the coming months, I will do some podcasts with people who are working with startup ecosystems around the world, and we have more knowledge which we can take away, and we can take the best out of it and start building beautiful, meaningful, and impactful companies out of India. I hope you like this video. Please don't forget to subscribe. It will help me a lot, motivate me to do more videos. And if you have any points, please do comment, and let's get the conversation started. Thank you.